Hello everyone, welcome to another video. I'm Vivid, and this is one of my builds. It's Bob builds a Freightyard. Um, yeah, Bob is gonna build some more stuff in this town. And first off, I just wanted to say happy holidays for people who get to celebrate the holidays. And yeah, at the start of this video, I just wanted to take a moment of silence for Um, for a couple of reasons. The first one is, um, well, for those of you who are in the future, there's been a pandemic going around, and I haven't looked at the latest figures, but I think it's at least very close to or over 2 million people um, who died to this disease in this year. And yeah, there's uh, a lot of people who worked in the hospitals and in the care homes who've had to see all this carnage at close hand, and I guess I also feel the powerlessness of it, and I just wanted to take a, yeah a short moment of silence for yeah what this year has been for those people and for the relatives of the people who passed away. And um, yeah, I don't know why I'm starting on a downer like that, but I think it's good to remember um, the people who are suffering around us, and so let's just take a moment to think about the people who are maybe having it rough this year, and yeah, just think about maybe uh, how much we appreciate them and how we could show that to them. I guess I don't know. I'm just gonna be quiet for a bit now. Bob is building a freightyard in this video, and well, at the start of it, he yeah he got some requests from the mayor of the town over to extend the canal network, because yeah, there were a lot of tourists who would love to also come through this area uh, with their little boats. You can't see the boats, I guess, but whatever. Um, so he started off by building some canals. And the canal building, um, there was some things that he hadn't figured out yet about the canals. And there's like this menu system in the game where it hides a lot of the menu buttons until you build a little thingy that then enables a certain reward kind of mechanic that allows you to see the extra menu buttons. And that menu button hiding system, I think it's called an MML. I have no clue what it would stand for, but that also results in you having to click the menu every time you want to plop a thing down. So when you want to make a canal like that and you're using an MML, uh, yeah, I didn't know that at first, so I had to Google it and look for what was going on. It was pretty hard to find. But the thing is that it's uh, a menu management system that was derping me out there, and I'm gonna be fixing that in between the videos. So here I just prepare the next bit of canal, but I'm not gonna put it down because it would take me too long, and I wanted to do some other stuff in this video, so I decided to just not finish the canal bit. But I did want to prepare it, and what I did here was, or what Bob did here, was put down the four streets. The middle ones are gonna be canal, and the outer ones are to make it, because the canal bits they tend to stick to a street. So I'm not sure why how I'm trying to say this, but they have an arrow on them, and the arrow always points towards the bank of the canal, and that arrow also auto rotates to a street when you hover it next to a street. It rotates it towards the street. So I'm using those streets to auto rotate them in the right direction, so I don't have to um, think about the rotation. But if once I have the menu stuff fixed, and I don't have to open the menu every time, I can just rotate it once and just plop it down a bunch of times. So that I did that because I didn't know that there was a fix for that yet. So what I'm doing here is, or what Bob is doing here, I'm really good at this Bob stuff. So here Bob decided that he wanted to use this area for a big freight yard. And um, when speaking to the company that builds the freight yards, he found out that they really liked flat ground. So Bob decided to make a big area very flat, and he's just starting to test out some different ideas. I cut out a bunch of footage of Bob just derping around with some freight stuff, and it's still gonna be a bit of trial and error, because it's kind of hard to get a good overview of how all the puzzle pieces work when you are in game. And I also had some derps. Yeah, here I measured the distance. This was after a lot of derping, by the way. I didn't think of that idea right away, but I ended up using um, roads to measure how long a piece would need to be, because there was an indication for how long a piece was in the menu. For instance, 16 would mean that it was 16 tiles long. And so Bob used some roads to measure out how long it was, and just started trying out puzzle pieces. And there's some that didn't have because there's a texture override for these, which made them, originally they weren't compatible with the network error mod rails, but there's a texture override pack that was created for it. But I guess for some pieces it didn't work. And here Bob had the idea to just double down and copy the same setup, because he thought it would look cool if they fitted together like that. But the construction company said, hey, you need to flatten that ground a bit more. So Bob flattened the ground. And here you can see the general setup of this area is just two very large, I don't know if you'd call this a freight yard. Um, I guess you'd have some cranes or some type of lifting devices, but um, yeah, I guess I don't have those yet. I think I'll look for some maybe a bit more classical looking freight mechanical stuff on the Simtropolis website. But for now, this is what we have here, and I think it looks kind of cool how those pieces fit together. It is advertised. Well, it's just um they or he or she, I don't know who made it, and well, um the mod was a package of it's called a modular Freightyard set or something like that. So the idea is that you can just puzzle pieces together to make any Freightyard you want. At least that's how the idea came across to me. But in the end, I think it doesn't quite work like that. Yeah, here Bob was um, yeah, he just didn't like how the rails weren't very smooth here. And so what he decided to do is to just redo the wheels from the higher elevated part up downwards, so that the because when everything's flat it won't automatically create a slope, but if you go from a height difference, either up or down a slope, I suppose, it will start to create gradients like that, and then it ended up fitting pretty smoothly. And here's he thought about the other side of the connection, and he wanted to he didn't want to overcomplicate it over here. Although maybe overcomplicated would have been interesting to look at, but there also wasn't too much space, so he decided to just do a relatively simple slope and to just click it a bunch of times to see if he could make it as smooth as possible. And I think it looks kind of smooth. Now here he created this and it just popped up. I don't know. Yeah, I think there's some things that could be improved about the way landscapes get shaped by the rails. But yeah, I guess there's always a way to fix it yourself by just redoing it in a different way. Now here, Bob is looking at some. Well, in game it's just decorative stuff, but let's just imagine that um, it's gonna be a freight company, I suppose. So Bob is creating a bit of a uh, freight yard um, company here. Yeah, he's just testing out some different ideas and making some designs and seeing how things work. And some of these are pretty random, and some of them don't have a lot of variations when you put multiple of them down. And he decided, yes, let's make this little area an area where a lot of pipes and cables get processed or stored, I guess. One of those. So he just made a big wall of cars or trailers with a bunch of pipes and a bunch of cable stuff, and a big open area where the trucks would be able to maneuver in and out of the area. And he thought those fractionally angled walls, they look pretty cool there, and they really, I don't know, they round off that shape pretty nicely with the grass transition. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. He decided to keep an opening, so there's some empty trailer beds there that are just waiting for some containers to to be put on them, and then have some trailers connect to them and drag it off. And here he's just testing some different ideas. So there's a little bit of a gate over there, and here there's a bit of a wall, and yeah, the the open wall areas of this set, they automatically tend to fill with cars, with parked cars. So this set wasn't meant to be used as uh, a modular industrial processing yard or whatever you would call this. It was kind of meant to be used as a filler for industrial areas. So you'd use these walls just to round off a big area with a lot of industry. And yeah, well, I don't know. I've never used it for that purpose, but I hadn't used it at all in general because this is the first time I'm using this mod. But yeah, I don't know exactly how I was meant to use them, but I thought the parked cars might look a bit weird, but it's also like people are working at this freight yard most likely. Maybe not as many people as is insinuated by the amount of cars that end up parking in this area, but maybe there is because there's not just people working at this freight yard itself, but there's also maybe a lot of truck drivers who come here to pick up their truck and leave their car here. So I don't know. Maybe it makes sense that there's a bunch of cars just parked all around the freight yard over there. And here I found, because I'm very new to this mod pack. First of all, it took me 6 minutes of scrolling through menus before I could even find it. Then the last menu I looked at was um, the monuments. I think it's monuments, the monument menu, and it's the more you say monument menu, the weirder it's gonna sound. So I'm gonna stop saying that word or those words. But in that menu, I found some of the bits that I used on the other side, and then I found these larger bits with all the trailers on it that looked pretty cool. And I thought, yeah, as you can see, even me just plopping it down a couple times, it automatically randomizes the trailers that are on the lots, and that is because the creator used what is called a prop family. It basically means that you connect a bunch of different versions of a certain object. I suppose you could call it an object. You connect a bunch of variations of those together into a family, and then you tell the game to just pick a random one of those, uh, and then it just yeah, just randomly fills in uh, those areas with props. So that's I think it's a bit more work to create a mod like that with random props, but I think it's a very nice result. And here on just the here Bob is just looking at this freight yard and thinking how would they reach the trains from the side of this, and so he thought, yeah, they probably need a bit of a maneuvering area where some equipment would come in. There's no equipment visible here, but um, yeah, we can imagine that there's like something for um, taking the stuff off of the trains. And at first he put some pipes down there, but the other area, as I already talked about, was the area where a lot of pipes were being processed. So he thought, let's just make this the cement bag area. And then he thought, just a bunch of cement bags looks a bit boring. So maybe I also do some gas canisters. And I think it's a pretty random looking area like this with a whole bunch of trailers. Maybe it's too many trailers. If you think it's too many trailers, you can let me know in the comments and maybe, yeah, I don't know. If it doesn't bother me, I tend to not change it. So maybe I won't change it, but maybe I will. I don't know. I'm not really, I'm not really too worried about the amount of traders here. I think, yeah, you shouldn't stare at these little details too long. Just because it's just a general feel that you're trying to create when you're creating an area like this. And a lot of that feeling is just created by the textures that are on the ground, and the fact that there are traders at all, and that they're in a certain pattern or something. And I haven't looked at these truck areas from real life or whatever. I suppose those filler lots would be more common if you were to look at areas next to highways where you'd have a little gas station and then a big area where truckers would be able to stop. But I just used it over there for the rail yard, and I thought I'm not sure if it makes sense. I don't really care if it makes sense. It achieves a certain feel for me at least, and I might just be weird in how things feel for me. That might just be a me thing, but to me it feels like a pretty industrial area right now. And I'm gonna change some things here. For instance, this area, I did like the way this whole thing connected to an avenue and stuff. But I didn't want to put down an avenue in this area. Maybe I'll change that in the future and just revert it back to an avenue because I do like the transition of the avenue a bit more than what I'm building now. And what I'm building now is not even the finished result or yeah uh, result. And yeah, it's gonna still change later on in the video, but that is because I had some issues with these freight yards. They needed a road connection, and I hadn't anticipated that they would need that. I thought they were just decorative, and yeah, they weren't just decorative, I guess. Um, I don't know how they exactly work, but they need power and a road connection. And I just hadn't anticipated that they would be more than just uh, a texture that you're really putting down. I thought maybe the main part of them, because there was a part that you could find in the rail menu, and there were some parts that you could find um, in the monument menu. I said it again. It's not that weird yet, but so there were some parts in the rail menu, some in the monument menu, and the starter parts or the center parts were in the rail menu, and the um, I don't know how many more times I can say this word, but the monument menu, uh, it contained some of the end pieces and some of the other pieces. And at some point, you're gonna see some of those pieces derp out because uh, the no road connection, uh, you don't. Yeah, it's not happening yet, but at some point, it's gonna say, we don't have a road connection. And in general, when a building does that, it's gonna end up, yeah, here we go. It's gonna end up getting abandoned, I suppose. And yeah, the problem with that is that the abandoned textures for these, yeah, I think something went wrong when they redid the textures and some of the addresses got merged up or whatever. But yeah, once they get abandoned, they completely derp out their ground textures, as you can see here. And so I had to. At this point, I didn't know what was going on, but when I was reviewing the footage while editing, I noticed that they kind of only did that after showing no road connection for a little bit, and they only did that once the train cars changed into like a murky texture, I guess. So I then concluded that it was related to that. Maybe that's a feature though. Maybe that's a feature of this set that you can just leave some bits unconnected and make them end up looking different. Um, it's a weird feature if that is the feature, and I'm not gonna say it's a bad feature, but it's one that um, yeah. So here there's still a bit that's not having a road connection, and it's gonna end up derping out as well in a little bit, and this one derps out even weirder. It like rotates the textures or whatever. It uses some random textures and rotates them. Or oh, okay. I thought it derped out even harder. Oh yeah, here we go. So it's it's just some weird glitch or something. I don't know. I think normally when a building dilapidates, I think that's the word you use for that. Um, normally it the game uh, uses like an address jump, I guess is what you might call it. It just, for instance, one ground texture might have an address of 10, let's say, and that's just the basic ground texture. And I think how the game works is that it just jumps to uh, a next uh, texture by a certain amount. It might just be a jump of one in terms of the address naming, and it decides to use that one as the dilapidated texture or something like that. I think something like that happened, and it ended up jumping through the texture. Um, yeah, to the texture TGI. It's called the TGI, and it's type, group, and instance, and it's a number. It's a set of numbers, and how the game sorts their textures and their assets and basically everything that's in the game. It's first sorts it by type, and then there's a indicator for which group, and then there's an indicator for which instance. And it's not very solid how those things are interpreted. It can be a bit different from one implementation to the next, but in general, I think what was happening was that there's uh, a certain yeah a certain jump in the instance value being caused by the dilapidation that wasn't anticipated for by the mod creators, or it might have been anticipated for by the mod creators, but not by the people who redid the ground textures. I don't know exactly, but basically they um, derped out because they were disconnected. So um, yeah, one of them looked super weird with a different direction to it. So I don't think that was a feature. But anyways, here I'm just going around the area, and I sped this up a bit because you've seen me put trees down, but I did a bit of a different type of tree build, I guess you could call it. So I started off with one type of trees, which was the Norway maples. Then I went around with the honey locusts, and then the huckberry. I'm not sure which the third one was. Oh yeah, the third one was the walnut, which were the a little bit brighter orange and green, and at the end the red ones were okay. I don't know what the red ones were, but you can find them in the description. I think I'll just put them all down again. I've been using the same trees because I think they just look very nice and they have the very nice autumn colors. So yeah, I, I don't know if there's a lot of better trees out there, but I do know that there's a lot of trees that don't look as good out there. And so fourthly, I went over them with a bit of these green uh, pine trees. I don't know which they were. Fifthly, I went over the edges with some feather grass, and now finally I'm using this dark straw, which was part of the um, I think it was RRP, which is the rural. Hmm, it was some sort of pasture decoration pack, so it's normally used in farm fields. But here I used the dark straw to simulate like an undergrowth for the forest. And here I'm just showing off the different seasons. And here we're gonna go into a little bit of farming because yeah, I hadn't built any farms in this area yet. Well, Bob hadn't built any farms. I also hadn't, but yeah, whatever. Um, yeah. So the previous or the city next over was a big farming town, and well, Bob just hadn't thought about farming yet, but his people were complaining about uh, a lot of the food being pre-processed and there not being a lot of fresh vegetables and fruits in the in the shops. Though there were some shops there that were able to grow some fruits and stuff in the backyards, and here some company just decided to wrap their whole building up in brown paper, and Bob was like, "Yeah, let's not do that." And yeah, it's weird when that happens. I don't know why companies do that, but I figured out in that instance what was causing it, so it's gonna be fixed. And here we can see that Bob is just making ridiculous amounts of money. It's not super ridiculous, but it's still it's like 7K a month, which is a lot in uh, this type of currency. You might not think it's that much. Well, even in euros, it's a lot of money for a normal person, but for a mayor, maybe it's not that much. But if you think about the things you can do with that amount of money in this game, then that's a ridiculous amount of money that Bob is making each month. And so, yeah, Bob is pretty satisfied, and he's also decided to use some of that money to improve the city a little bit. So he improved some of the schooling, and he made sure that the hospitals were well funded. And here we just have a little bit of an overview. As you can see, this farm area, it's still very bare bones, I guess you could call it. It's not decorated yet. I did decorate this area a whole bunch, and I thought let's not do a video that's just 90% decoration. So I decided to keep that decoration for the next video. And here, I hadn't shown this bridge yet, and I think it looks really nice at night. So yeah, Bob had this bridge designed for this little uh, rail crossing, and yeah, here you can see how it transitions into the area that we saw Bob build this episode. Here's the little freight yard. It looks very cute like this, I think, with a transition from the trees into the freight yard. It really reminds me of something you would see in like an industrial kind of Scandinavian town near the shore. There we're just gonna look at this little train passing by, or well, you don't have to look at the train, I guess. You can also look at that little no road access sign in the top left. Okay, and the final shot of this episode is gonna be this train leaving the little freight area. So, as you might have guessed, I do like trains. I hope you like trains. I want to thank you all for watching, and I'd like to see you again. Goodbye.